Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith. I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of our coverage tonight. We're broadcasting from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Joined tonight by Stephen Young, who is running some of the technical aspects behind the scenes of tonight's broadcast. Our Adam Bernstein, back from his globe-trotting adventures, manning the cameras for us this evening. And Michael Caine doing some still photography as well, so keep your eyes peeled to his profile on X for some post-launch still photos. Always turns out some great ones. In the center of your screen, you see Space Launch Complex 40, otherwise known as Slick 40. SpaceX preparing to launch its workhorse Falcon 9 rocket, standing by with a batch of 22 Starlink V2 mini satellites. Just about an hour and a minute away from the launch of the Starlink Group 6-16 mission. Will be the 19th dedicated mission launching SpaceX's upgraded Starlink V2 mini satellites. Currently, SpaceX is targeting a T0 liftoff time of 11:38 p.m. Eastern. Those joining around the world, that's 03:38 UTC on September 16th. If you'd like to help support our coverage of the space program, got a little under 900 of you joining us at this point in the broadcast. Really appreciate if you hit the like button. Really does help a great deal. Share the stream as well so more people can help find this coverage. And if you subscribe to the channel, then you can ring the bell and get notified when we post new videos and get notified when these streams do go live. Of course, we rely on the power of both our viewers as well as our channel members, so thank you to everyone who made a contribution to help fund our coverage of the space program. If you'd like to help do so, you can also consider making a donation through the YouTube Super Chat feature. Love seeing the comments when we do the live broadcasts and helps bring you into the conversation as well. Or you could also become a channel member. In addition to the member-only videos, membership grants you access to the 4K live stream of our launch coverage from missions here in Florida, as well as discounts to our online shop. Now, T-minus 59 minutes, 30 seconds, and counting. A little over 20 or so minutes away from the point at which the launch director give the result of the go-no-go poll to start propellant load. As a reminder, if you haven't been with us for our last couple of mission launches with SpaceX, they are no longer providing the mission audio on YouTube, which is why, unfortunately, we won't be able to bring you that audio until about 5 minutes before liftoff. Though we've covered quite a few Falcon 9 launches, we do know the nominal countdown procedure and the things to watch for, so we'll be keeping you apprised of things as the count moves down through and the fueling process gets underway. But again, that's why you will not hear, up until the last few minutes, any of the mission audio. SpaceX is running the countdown for tonight's mission from its Hangar X site here at Kennedy Space Center. That's the place where they refurbish their Falcon 9 boosters, as well as for Falcon Heavy, prepare them for flight. SpaceX also has support for this launch in part from the control room at their headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Again, tonight's launch is targeting a T0 liftoff of 11:38 p.m. Eastern. That's 03:38 UTC. If needed, SpaceX does have one additional backup opportunity in this launch window coming up at 12:07 a.m. Saturday morning, 04:07 UTC. And if for whatever reason neither of those pan out, they do have two backup launch opportunities coming up tomorrow, Saturday, September 16th. Those are 11:13 p.m. Eastern and 11:38. Watching the weather closely, as you may have noticed in our live stream here, may have seen a couple pops of lightning. SpaceX and the Eastern Range continue to track lightning as a potential limiting item for tonight's mission, as well as what's known as the Anvil Cloud Rule. Coming into tonight's attempts, the 45th Weather Squadron did place tonight's launch forecast at 45% favorable weather, so a little bit under a coin toss here as far as a weather standpoint. Things do seem to be clearing, but as of right now, there is still a Phase 1 lightning watch in effect, and the range remains red for weather. So that's something we're certainly keeping an eye on as we move through the start of fueling, which again, as we are at T-minus 56 minutes, 33 seconds and counting, is just a little bit under 20 minutes away from when the launch director would give their go for the start of propellant load. Keep you apprised of that. Speaking of the count, as we get ready to potentially launch this Falcon 9 rocket, let's go ahead and step you through the process of the countdown that we're looking at tonight. T-minus 55 minutes and counting. Let's go ahead and step through the countdown timeline for tonight's mission. Again, as I had mentioned, at the T-minus 38 minute mark, that's when the launch director would give the results of the go, no-go poll to start propellant load, if they are ready to do so. Then at T-minus 35 minutes, kerosene or RP1 will be loaded onto both the first and second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. At the same time, liquid oxygen also will start flowing aboard the first stage. T-minus 16 minutes, liquid oxygen will start being loaded onto the second stage of the Falcon 9. Prior to this, we'll see the so-called big vent from the strong back at the launch pad as the feed lines are chilled. Again, because we're not getting mission audio from SpaceX this evening, that big vent will be a key indication that things are proceeding on track tonight. So go ahead and keep your eyes peeled for that. It'll be quite noticeable when it happens. T-minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines will get underway. That involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps. It's important because it helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. At T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract begin. Start with the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings opening up, and then that strong back will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket, and will stay in that position until liftoff. At that point, the strong back will tilt back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the Falcon 9 to leap off the pad. About 2 minutes out, liquid oxygen loading will be complete on the Falcon 9, at which point the rocket will be fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Then in the last 60 seconds, control of the countdown will be handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks will be brought up to flight pressure. The launch director will give their go for liftoff at 45 seconds out. T-minus 3 seconds. The engine controller will start the engine ignition sequence. And then if all 9 engines are healthy, everything looking nominal, the flight computer will give the command for those hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for liftoff at T0. Again, currently targeting 11:38 p.m. Eastern, 03:38 UTC. As you may have noticed, though, we are still seeing quite a bit of lightning near the pad here. It's at Slick 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Weather remaining a watch item for tonight's mission, so we will be sure to keep an eye on that. Keep you posted if SpaceX does need to pivot to one of its backup launch opportunities. Again, they do have one other opportunity tonight, just after midnight at 12:07 a.m. 04:07 UTC. And they do have 2 launch opportunities coming up tomorrow evening. T-minus 48 minutes, 52 seconds and counting. Still are seeing some pops of lightning in the distance, but can let you know that the range is green for weather at the moment, which is certainly a welcome update. So in just about 10 minutes or so, again, based off of the timeline that we just stepped through, the launch director will give their results of the go, no-go poll for the start of propellant load. If things are looking good from a technical side for the Falcon 9, then they will begin fueling 3 minutes later at T-minus 35 minutes. T-minus 47 minutes, 48 seconds and counting. As we're getting closer to the start of propellant load, let's go ahead and take a moment and look at where this mission will fall in the record books for SpaceX, as well as the history of the launch pad here. Tonight's mission, Starlink 6-16, will be the 5th flight of this particular Falcon 9 booster, tail number 1078. This is the 256th Falcon 9 launch to date so far. It is the 62nd Falcon 9 launch just of this year, the 65th orbital launch for SpaceX overall in 2023. Within the last 365 days for SpaceX, this will be the 85th Falcon launch. Talking about the context for Slick 40, this is the 143rd SpaceX orbital launch from this pad. Overall, launch number 198, creeping up on 200 there. And this will be the 49th orbital launch from Cape Canaveral in 2023. Now T-minus 46 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. Several buttons that made settings go wonky on all the MFJ cameras just so that we wouldn't run into that issue. Seems to have a hot mic. T-minus 40 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. Apologies for some of the audio difficulties we're having here in the fishbowl tonight. Trying to get those cleared up for you. In the meantime, do want to thank the more than 2,200 of you that are joining us for the launch attempt of the Falcon 9 rocket for the Starlink 6-16 mission. If you haven't already, if you could hit the like button, it's a great way to help support our coverage, as is sending in YouTube super chats like Kellen526 with a good job corgi in there. So thanks, Kellen. Appreciate you helping to support our coverage tonight. About a minute and a half away from the launch director giving the results of the go, no go poll. Fueling to start shortly thereafter. T-minus 39 minutes, 22 seconds and counting. Now T-minus 36 minutes and counting. Want to just address the lightning that you're seeing in frame. Even though we are seeing quite the light show behind the rocket, as of right now, the range is green as far as lightning concerns. So from a weather standpoint, for liftoff at 11:38 p.m. Eastern. Again, from a weather standpoint, things are trending in a much better direction. As we're now T-minus 35 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. We're just a handful of seconds away from when the start of propellant loading should begin. So keep an eye on the bottom of the Falcon 9 rocket. Unfortunately, a little obscured tonight. You see the crane that is between our camera and the Falcon 9 there over at pad 40. If you look down at the bottom, you see a little bit of a structure that's sticking out just above the tree line, just to the right of the Falcon 9. That's actually the first segment of what will become a crew and cargo tower, similar to the one that is at Launch Complex 39A. It will give SpaceX and NASA redundant capabilities to launch crew missions and cargo missions using the Dragon spacecraft from pad 40. Did just get an update from SpaceX. One moment. Saying all systems are good on the Falcon 9. Weather trending favorably for tonight's Falcon 9 launch. So, good update. Hearing from the horse's mouth that things are going along smoothly. Again, if you're just joining us, though, we do have now a little over 3,000 of you with us this evening. I'm Will Robinson-Smith for Spaceflight Now. Joined alongside our full crew tonight, Stephen Young, Adam Bernstein, and Michael Kane. Getting ready to launch the Starlink 6-16 mission at 11:38 p.m. is still the T0 liftoff time being tracked by SpaceX. Unfortunately, we will not be seeing or hearing mission audio tonight. Again, SpaceX has stopped providing that at this time as they've made the transition from YouTube to X, so you will not be hearing mission audio until about the last 5 minutes before liftoff, and then we'll be able to pipe some of that in for you. Do want to thank some of our folks in the live chat that are helping to support our coverage with the YouTube Super Chat. Transdimensional, the $2 Super Chat using the Super Sticker feature. A little behind the scenes clapboard, and yes, we have now cleared up the hot mic issue, so hopefully that'll stay in the clear as we get closer and closer to liftoff. At this point, both liquid oxygen and rocket grade kerosene, that RP1, are now flowing onto the Falcon 9 first stage. What I was starting to say when I was talking about the crane and the launch tower is that crane, unfortunately, is standing between our camera and the Falcon 9 rocket. But if you keep a weather eye on the bottom of the first stage as fueling continues to get underway, might be able to catch a glimpse of some of the vapors forming. Good visual indication that fueling is in fact underway. The other big marker, of course, is the so-called big vent from the strong back. That'll happen at around T-minus 20 minutes. So we'll be watching for that as well. That's a good visual indication that fueling is proceeding on track. And as we get toward liftoff in hopefully just a little over half an hour from now, let's go ahead and talk about where this Falcon will be flying once it leaves the pad. T-minus 31 minutes, 7 seconds and counting. Let's talk a little trajectory. T-minus 28 minutes, 56 seconds and counting. We can start to see a little bit of that venting I was mentioning, the bottom of the Falcon 9 rocket. Good sign of that fueling process. Now about 7 minutes underway. As you're starting to say, let's go ahead and talk trajectory as fueling continues here. Falcon 9 rocket, of course, launching from Space Launch Complex 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Again, targeting that T0 liftoff of 11:38 p.m. Eastern, 03:38 UTC. It'll fly in a southeast trajectory tonight. Following stage separation, that first stage booster will land on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. Tonight on deck, they're using Just Read the Instructions. The other East Coast drone ship is a shortfall of Gravitas. And on the West Coast, they have, of course, I Still Love You. Following that, the second stage of the Falcon 9 will continue on with the Starlink satellites. The fairing halves will jettison just a bit downrange of this map. SpaceX using one of its 2 East Coast recovery ships to scoop up the fairing halves. Tonight they are using Doug. It and its partnership Bob were, of course, named after former NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, the duo that flew aboard the Demo 2 mission back in May of 2020. Now T-minus 26 minutes, 5 seconds and counting. Do have a super chat question from Mans on Mars. First off, thank you for making a super chat donation, helping to support our coverage of the space program. Asks what the farthest you can see this with clear skies up the eastern seaboard. Is it possible to spot this from Virginia at stage separation? Unfortunately, because this mission is flying in a southeast trajectory, Virginia launch viewers will be out of luck on this one. Likely the farthest north you'd be able to see it on a clear night with this trajectory would be probably North Florida, southern Georgia area. So not the most ideal for stepping outside and hoping to catch a glimpse of it. I'm sorry to say, Mans on Mars, but fortunately, we're here to bring you those up-close launch views. And again, if you're a member, you can go ahead and catch it in 4K on our YouTube channel here. But thank you for the question, and thank you for the support. Also want to thank Alan Gable, one of our regulars joining us again tonight. Thank you for the $20 super chat, Alan. Really appreciate that. Saying Spaceflight now rocks rockets. Well, we certainly try. We appreciate you being with us here on a Friday night. As the weather is clearing, I know we're all still seeing lots of lightning behind the rocket, but the range is saying that we are in a good spot. The weather has been trending better, certainly over the last hour. Getting closer to launch now, 24 minutes, 19 seconds from now. T-minus 23 minutes, 3 seconds and counting. Just to give some perspective on the lightning that you're seeing behind the pad here, that storm as we're watching the radar appears to be at least 20 or so miles offshore, so good distance away from the pad. And again, weather has been trending better over the evenings. SpaceX did confirm that they are tracking better weather conditions as they move closer to launch. Now just about 22.5 minutes away from now. I want to thank Douglas Anderson for becoming a channel member at the mission specialist level. Thank you, Douglas, for joining us. And he and the rest of our channel members have 4K access to our launch coverage for missions heading off from Florida. So go ahead and pop that up on the big screen. Check out those 4K views tonight. Membership also includes access to our member-only videos here on our YouTube channel, as well as discount at the merch shop over at spaceflightnow.com. And while we certainly appreciate those who are able to make a super chat donation or join us with channel membership, is a great and easy way to help support our coverage tonight, and that's just by simply hitting the like button, helping more people find our coverage and sharing the stream, which is all fantastic. Now T-minus 20 minutes, 38 seconds and counting. Coming up on the so-called big vent from the strong back there. So keep an eye out for that in the next minute or so. Do have a question in the super chats from Roseanne DeVasto. First off, thank you so much for your super chat donation. Really appreciate you supporting our coverage at that level. Question is, do you know which planet is so bright in the eastern sky? Just did a little quick check on that before we go ahead and answer. We do see the start of the big vent there on the strong back. So another good indication that things are proceeding well tonight for the fueling of the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff at 11:38 p.m. tonight. Again, because fueling is underway, if for whatever reason they do need to call off the launch from this T0 time 11:38, they would need to stand down from tonight's operations and look at their backups tomorrow, Saturday night. Just want to make that note. Going back to Roseanne's question, we believe that is Jupiter. Typically, you can see Venus as a bright planet in the east, but it's a little early in the overnight hours to be able to see Venus. Just taking a look at the star tracker. So likely Jupiter tonight is what you're seeing. Thanks for the question, Roseanne. Also want to thank Transdimensional for jumping back in the super chat conversation, saying Tampa a little cloudy right now, but we'll be watching. Hopefully it'll be bright enough from the Tampa vantage point that you can at least see it as it makes its ascent. So keeping my fingers crossed for you. But with SpaceX's launch cadence, if you are not able to catch it tonight for whatever reason, if you're in Florida, 4 or so days from now, odds are we'll get another Falcon 9 launch of another Starlink mission in the next 4 days. One of the marketing tools of the Space Coast now is not just the other amenities that we've had, but just with the rapid cadence of launches here. It's a good opportunity to be able to see a mission go off when you're enjoying some time at the beach with your family or enjoying one of our theme parks here in Central Florida. Now T-minus 17 minutes, 12 seconds and counting. We're just a little over a minute away from liquid oxygen starting to be loaded onto the second stage of the Falcon 9. Taking a peek at the live chat. Do have a super chat question from Walter Morton. First off, Walter, thanks for chipping in to help our coverage this evening. Question is, do unmanned launch vehicles only have numbers? If the question is referring to the tail number of the Falcon 9, this being B1078, the answer would be no. That's just the designation of the Falcon 9's first stage. If you're asking about the name of the overall mission, as in Starlink 6-16, that's just the numerical designation for the shell that this particular Starlink mission is launching into, and the mission number within that shell. So I hope I answered your question. If I didn't, please feel free to jump back in and clarify for me. But apologies if I didn't answer it, but hopefully I did. Now T-minus 13 minutes, 55 seconds and counting. Went over the mission stats just a little bit ago, talking about where this mission will fall for SpaceX once all is said and done. Do want to frame that a little bit different context, taking a look at the Falcon family of launches. Here's a graphical representation of Falcon launches over the last several years. Going back to 2010, you can see just how much SpaceX has ramped up its cadence of missions. recently, of course, they passed the milestone of all the launches they had in 2022. So far, they stand at 64 missions this year, orbital launches. That is not including the Starship Integrated Flight Test 1. This is just Falcon rockets, so Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, looking at 2023. Tonight will be number 65 for SpaceX. Now T minus 12 minutes, 21 seconds and counting. T minus 11 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. Did see a question in the live chat asking if we'll have coverage of the booster landing on the drone ship. Yes, we will be able to carry our coverage through that point. For those that weren't with us as we talked about it earlier, though, because SpaceX is not distributing the mission audio nor the trajectory information after pretty much right after booster landing on the drone ship, unfortunately, we will be ending our coverage shortly thereafter since we don't have that trajectory data and we're not able to provide you with current accurate updates throughout the course of the mission, but we will update you on our social media channels throughout the process, and we'll let you know when the payload deployment happens after we end our live coverage here, but that's still a good bit away. In the meantime, let's talk about what's encapsulated in those payload fairings. Let's talk a little Starlink, shall we? On board this mission are 22 Starlink satellites. As we talked about before, this is the 19th dedicated launch for Starlink V2 mini satellites. You're taking a look at a file photo of what they looked like in their launch configuration before takeoff. Each of them comes in at about 1,760 pounds, or about 800 kilograms. Once their solar panels unfurl, each of these Starlinks has a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon hull thrusters for in-orbit maneuvers, and they were built in Redmond, Washington. That's near Seattle. Now T minus 9 minutes, 25 seconds and counting. Now T-minus 7 minutes, 47 seconds and counting. Things continue to move well with the fueling process for the Falcon 9 rocket. As I mentioned, this will be the 5th time this booster's flying, so let's talk a little bit about its history, the missions it's flown, leading up to its 5th flight tonight. This is booster tail number 1078. Made its first flight earlier this year, back on March 2nd, as it launched the Crew 6 mission to the International Space Station. Of course, Dragon Endeavour and its 4 crew members just returned not too long ago with a splashdown off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida. That particular Dragon will be reflown early next year on the Crew 8 mission up to station. Next for this booster was April 28th. It was a mission for the satellite telecommunications company SES. It was the second pair of their O3B mPOWER satellites. And the third and fourth missions for this booster were both Starlink missions on June 4th and August 7th. They were Starlink Group 6-4 and 6-8 respectively. And again, compared to some of the other boosters in SpaceX's repertoire, this is a fairly newish rocket compared to some of the other ones. SpaceX is in the process of verifying its rockets up to 20 flights. So far, it has 2 boosters that have 16 missions under their belts. Those are tail numbers 1058 and 1060. Made their record 16th flights earlier in the summer. A T-minus 5 minutes, 51 seconds and counting. T-minus 5 minutes, 31 seconds and counting. Do have a super chat question from Joe Pistrito. Apologies, Joe, if I mispronounced your last name. But thank you first off for the $10 super chat. Really appreciate you supporting our coverage this evening. Question is, are these satellites for commercial Starlink or the government version, also known as Star Shield? These are the commercial Starlinks that are launching tonight.
Starback retract has started.
Coming into the last 4 minutes of the countdown, want to thank the more than 11,000 of you that are joining us for our live coverage tonight. If you haven't already, and to help some folks find our coverage in the last few minutes of the count, if you could hit that like button, really appreciate it. Share the stream so some people can join in for these last few exciting moments as fueling wraps up. And we can get ready for a liftoff in just over 3.5 minutes. We are starting to see the beginning of the strong back retract as the tower moves away from the Falcon 9 rocket, tilting back about 1.5 degrees. You can see here a low view of the Falcon 9. Now less than 3 minutes to lift off.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
You hear that call it that stage 1 LOX loading is complete as we get to the last 2 minutes of the count. Before we lose track, do want to thank both Alex H, and Southern California Rain Fanner for your super chat donations. Really appreciate you supporting our coverage as we are now T-minus 1 minute 49 seconds away from liftoff.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
For the call that stage 2 LOX loading has wrapped up. Falcon 9 is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. The venting you're seeing is SpaceX purging the strong back propellant lines prior to launch.
Ground gas closeouts.
Now coming up on the last minute of the countdown, T-minus 1 minute, the Falcon 9's flight computers will take control. Stage 1 and 2 will pressurize for flight. The onboard computer will be performing checks of the first stage engine steering system.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Hear that call that the rocket is in startup now. Everything continues to remain on track for a liftoff in just over 30 seconds from now.
LD, go for launch.
And that call that we wanted to hear, we are go for launch, now 27 seconds away. Keep an eye near the bottom of the Falcon 9 rocket. You'll see that green flash, the T-tab ignition fluid. Now 15 seconds from liftoff. And here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-16 mission. Now 10 seconds into flight. The rocket has now cleared the towers. It is pitching downrange as it climbs away from Cape Canaveral, heading in a southeast trajectory. The call of propulsion is nominal. Let's listen to the roar of those 9 Merlin engines. Now T plus 50 seconds. Merlin engines will be throttling down as the vehicle approaches max Q, point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. T plus 1 minute, 12 seconds. Falcon 9 traveling faster than the speed of sound. Getting some great views from our tracking camera. Our Adam Bernstein bringing us tracking images tonight. Now coming up on 2 minutes into this mission, approaching the point of main engine cutoff, or MECO, where the 9 Merlin engines will shut down. That'll be followed by stage separation and ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. That'll be followed by the jettison of the payload fairings. Some great color. And just want to explain the discrepancy you see here. The SpaceX broadcast is behind in the real-time image, but you can get a nice shot of Florida right before the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine. But that's why you're seeing a little bit of a difference between our countdown clock and theirs. Ours is in real time, theirs is working on a delay. Now T plus 3 minutes into flight. You started to see the grid fins deploying on the Falcon 9 first stage. What you're seeing now on your screen is from our tracking camera. This is the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. Just a gorgeous view. And you see those fairing halves falling away. The Starlink V2 mini satellites now exposed to the vacuum of space as they continue on their ascent, while the first stage booster makes its way back down to the drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. Again, tonight SpaceX is using the drone ship Just Read the Instructions, which is poised and ready to catch the first stage as it makes its descent. That entry burn now just a little over 2 minutes away. It'll be coming up at T plus 6 minutes, 8 seconds. Still seeing great views as the night sky has cleared up and we're able to continue tracking really darn well the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. You're seeing the glow of that lone Merlin vacuum engine powering the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket, now 4.5 minutes into flight. Here's an onboard view on the right-hand side of your screen of that Merlin vacuum engine. On the left-hand side, a little dark, but that is the first stage, the Falcon 9 rocket. Again, the entry burn set to begin in just over a minute from now. Nominal trajectory on the second stage. Now less than a minute for the start of the entry burn on the Falcon 9 rocket. There you're seeing an image of that first stage on the left-hand side of your screen from one of the onboard cameras there. As they get ready for the start of the entry burn. Sounds like some of the folks in the live chat that were watching from Orlando got to see it clearly, or somewhat clearly, so glad you at least got a glimpse of the launch. Should see the start of that entry burn beginning momentarily on your screen. Just a few seconds. It'll be on the left-hand side there.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And there you hear the call out, and you see the start of that entry burn. Again, this is on a little bit of a delay, which is why you see the SpaceX count-up clock is different from ours. Ours is in real time. Theirs is on a bit of a lag, a little bit of a delay there.
Stage 1 entry burn shut down.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
And the entry burn has now completed. Coming up on the landing burn beginning at T plus 8 minutes, 4 seconds. Just a little over a minute away from now. And as we're coming up on the start of the landing
Stage 1
bird,
transonic.
hear the call out for stage 1 going transonic. Now slowed down to below the speed of sound. Getting ready to land on the drone ship. Just read the instructions tonight. And you see the start of that landing
Stage
bird
1 landing
beginning.
burn.
The drone
Cover
ship
ends.
will start to come into view momentarily. And there you see it coming into view. Hopefully we'll get an on-camera. Yep, there's the drone ship perspective.
Landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And we see the landing of that first stage booster, 1078, making its 5th flight to and from space.
MVAC shutdown.
And here the call out just before SpaceX wrapped up its broadcast for SECO, or second stage engine cutoff. The upper stage of the Falcon 9 now in a coast stage after the landing of the first stage booster on the drone ship. Just to read the instructions. And again, it's just as a reminder, because SpaceX is not providing trajectory data for us, we're going to go ahead and wind down our live coverage, taking a look now at the pad there, empty of a Falcon 9 rocket, but you'll see that strong back start to move back into an upright position shortly. It's part of SpaceX's updated procedure for being able to turn around the pad more expeditiously, getting ready for another flight coming up in the next few days or so. Taking a look at the live chat. Want to thank Papachenko for your $10 super chat donation. Thank you so much for supporting us this evening, Bob. Saying, Spaceflight now, we need you. Use this money to buy some coffee for the team. Certainly appreciate our coffee fund. I know Steven certainly does. More of a tea drinker myself, but could certainly use a nice cup of green tea right about now. Now T plus 11 minutes, 55 seconds and counting into this mission, Starlink 6-16. If you weren't with us the first time, want to briefly review where this Starlink mission happens to fall in the records for SpaceX this year. Go ahead and take a look back at the mission stats. This was the 5th flight of a Falcon 9 booster, tail number 1078. This was the 256th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 62nd Falcon 9 launch of this calendar year, the 65th orbital launch overall for SpaceX. In the last 365 days, this was the 85th Falcon launch. From Pad 40, this was the 143rd SpaceX orbital launch. Overall from Pad 40, getting closer to that big 200 number. This was mission number 198. And from the Cape, consisting of both Cape Canaveral Space Force Station and NASA's Kennedy Space Center, this was the 49th orbital launch of 2023, getting real close to the big 5-0 of this year. Again, for Florida's Space Coast, this is getting close to beating the record that we had set for last year. I believe last year we closed out at 61 launches on the year from Florida. Certainly on pace to beat that this year. Taking a look at just taking a look one more time at where this falls in SpaceX's Falcon family of launches. Again, this was the 65th orbital launch for SpaceX this year, so not counting the Starship Integrated Flight Test 1. This is just Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy rockets that we're looking at here. The SpaceX continues to pull away from their previous record of 61 launches that they ended 2022 with. You see the bobbing light of our Adam Bernstein starting to wrap things up out there in the field, battling the mosquitoes tonight. Appreciate all Adam does. So far in the back end of this year, SpaceX has been launching an average of about once every 4 days. Tentatively, the next launch that we're tracking from here in Florida is coming up on the evening of the 19th Eastern Time. So be sure to keep tabs on our launch schedule on our website, spaceflightnow.com, for the very latest on that mission. Want to give one last shout of thanks to our YouTube channel members, like Roman's Remodeling, who just became a channel member at the mission specialist level. Thank you for joining us, and for all of those who have been chipping in with some great comments on the YouTube Super Chat feature, like Brad Hedinger saying, love Spaceflight now. Thank you for all that you do. Well, thank you so much, Brad, and for everyone else who's been joining us tonight, helping create some good conversation as we worked our way through a bit of spotty weather that fortunately cleared up. We got a good launch and look forward to the next one. As I just showed you on the graph, it's been a busy year here in Florida's Space Coast, and we've got a lot more coming up on the back end, including another Falcon Heavy launch, looking at liftoff no earlier than October 5th, launching NASA's Psyche spacecraft to explore a mineral-rich asteroid. Again, that launch targeting no earlier than the morning of August 5th, or October 5th, excuse me. And that'll be launching from the pad you see here on your screen, Launch Complex 39A. Busy time here, and we appreciate all of you being with us, and we love bringing you this coverage. So for all of us here at Spaceflight Now, for Stephen Young, Adam Bernstein, and Michael Kane, of course, keep an eye on our social media channels on X and on Threads for launch pictures from Michael and Adam from the evening. For all of us, I'm Will Robinson Smith. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up our coverage for tonight. If you'd like to keep eyes on the pads here at the Cape, you can go ahead and check out Launchpad Live right here on our YouTube channel. But that'll do it for us tonight. Thanks again for being with us on a wonderful Friday. Hope you enjoy your weekend, and we will see you next time.